I guess that's my cue. Making sure we're on air. See how many people joining us, 2 participants so far. Guess that's my cue to begin the broadcast. 1 second, I'm just adjusting some things, making sure that I'm right and exact. Okay, making sure that I'm right. Okay, here we go. Hotep Black Power family, Doshon Farad, standing in tonight for the attorney at war, Dr. Malik Zulu Shabazz, who is the national chairman of the new Black Panther Party, as well as the founder and executive director of Black Lawyers for Justice, based out of the Washington, D.C. area. For those of you who may not be aware of who I am, I'm a journalist. I'm affiliated. I work with Dr. Boyce Watkins at yourblackworld.com. I'm also the communications director for the DC-based community service organization, Foresight for Life. I've had the honor working with the Movement magazine. I'm also, affiliated with the GoPro Radio Network, which is based out of New York City. You can Google me. But of course, this night is not about me. This is about us, the Black nation, the worldwide Black nation. People within my circle, we don't refer to Black people as being a minority, because we're not the minority, as Brother Malcolm X has stated. We are actually a part of a world majority. Excuse me, I'm adjusting the lighting, making sure that you all can see me. I'm noticing that my glasses are giving off the glare. I actually know better because people have told me that since I'm on air all the time, I should get the non-glare glasses. But anyway, tonight, family, we're going to be discussing for the duration until about 9 p.m. Eastern, the 10-point platform of the new Black Panther Party for self-defense. And of course, we'll be discussing as it relates to the original 10-point platform of the original Black Panther Party for self-defense. For those of you who may not know my history, I have the honor of serving in the new Black Panther Party. Ironically, I joined when I was finishing undergrad in 2001, when I was 24 years old, under the leadership of Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz, several months after the passing or the transitioning of our Black Power General, National Chairman, the immortal Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Ibaye Ashe, pouring water to the earth in honor of the ancestors whose birthday is coming up his birthday is on January 12th. This year in Brooklyn, Sister Ya Asantewa, who's also a member of the new Black Panther Party, she usually has a program held in his honor. And of course, just to let you know, we're going to be discussing Brother Khalid tonight in terms of his leadership of the new Black Panther Party. But anyway, Sister Ya Asantewa in Brooklyn on the 12th January, on his birthday, we'll be having a program in Brooklyn. And the keynote speaker is Dr. Umar Johnson. Sister Ya has been holding a celebration in honor of Brother Khalid for a long time now. And several people have keynoted it on occasions, primarily Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz, who was a top student of Dr. Khalid, and then later Dr. Umar Johnson. So it's like Attorney Shabazz and Dr. Johnson have taken turns, those main two, keynoting these celebrations in honor of our Black Power General. So family, tonight, we're going to be discussing the 10-point platform. Now, just to let you know, to give you a background of the 10-point platform, regardless of which formation, whether it is the original Black Panther Party, Black Panther Brigade, the various groups that came out of the original Panther Party that was founded in 1966, October 15, 1966, by brothers Huey P. Newton, Dr. Huey P. Newton, and Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, Phi Beta Sigma, my frat brother. They formed the 10-point platform for the organization. They primarily, of course, there were other people that were involved, but the 10-point platform serves as the agenda, the foundation of the organization. And regardless of which formation that you may follow or come encounter, all of them have a 10-point platform. The new Black Panther Party is no different. So the 10-point platform outlines what the original party was trying to accomplish, what the new Black Panther Party is trying to accomplish. And of course, the various formations, New Black Panther Party included, stand on the shoulders of the original Panther Party. So when Brother Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, was the national chairman, he always would admonish the Panthers under his leadership not to refer to what Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale founded as the old Black Panther Party. He always instructed us to refer to that as the original Black Panther Party, on whose shoulders that we stand. Now, keep in mind, yes, there have been differences between some of the members of the original Panther Party and the new Black Panther Party, but don't let the white media tell you that every single original Panther is against the new Black Panther Party. Even under Brother Khalid Abdul Muhammad, you had original Panthers, and even now, original Panthers in the new Black Panther Party. Some of them serving as advisors, some of them serving as foot soldiers, and even as officers, even some serving on the National Central Committee. Okay, so don't let people outside of our community or confused Negroes confuse you or try to confuse you. So we're going to get right to it right now, and I'm going to give you just a background of the Black Panther Party. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. First of all, I would describe the new Black Panther Party, just like the original Panther Party, is an amalgamation of various philosophies. Amalgamation means a mixture into one. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, Dr. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, both were inspired by the various Black liberation movements at that time. The Nation of Islam, the Kwame Toure's organization, All African Revolutionary People's Party. Okay, they were inspired by Black nationalist organizations and even by some of the civil rights organizations, such as the NAACP. Some of the members of the original party were members of the NAACP and Nation of Islam and various other organizations. They were started at a time when many African Americans were becoming disenchanted with the nonviolent philosophy of the immortal Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Okay, many of them had begun to listen to Malcolm X's speeches, and the best example of this would be the SNCC organization, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They were listening to Brother Malcolm's tapes, and they became disenchanted with the nonviolent philosophy of Dr. King and most of the civil rights leaders at that time, and the assimilationist ideas that were being put forth by many civil rights leaders. And so they began to move more towards Black nationalism, armed struggle. Well, Huey and Bobby were in that way. They weren't members of the SNCC organization, but they were still, they were a part of that generation that Black people that took on the philosophy that many members of SNCC took on. By the way, keep in mind, H. Rap Brown, Brother Imam Jamil Al-Amin, was in SNCC at that time. Him and Kwame Toure, him and Brother Mukasa Ricks. And H. Rap Brown joined the Panther Party. Now he's currently serving time in jail for a crime that he didn't commit. And we're asking you to free Jamil out. We're demanding that you free Imam Jamil Al-Amin and all political prisoners. We say free them all. Okay, so anyway, Bobby and Huey were inspired not just by many of the Black nationalist groups and the civil rights organizations, but they were also inspired by a lot of leftist teachings, a lot of communist teachings, Marxism, which is, that's what distinguishes the original Panther Party from the new Black Panther Party. Now keep in mind, many of the original Panthers, particularly on the West Coast, in Oakland and that area, California, the Bay Area, California, many of them were inspired by Marxism. Even though they were pro-Black, they were not necessarily pro-African. Now, what do I mean by that? If you read the autobiography of Assata Shakur, she speaks about how, if you notice on the East Coast, many Panthers in New York City and Philadelphia and New Jersey, many of them have African, Swahili, Islamic names. Assata Shakur, Matula Shakur, Jamil Zaid Shakur. Many of them have African names, Afeni Shakur, African or Swahili names, because on the East Coast, many of the Panthers were involved in what was referred to as cultural nationalism. They fell in line with many respects with Dr. Maulana Karenga, who in Los Angeles, Dr. Maulana Karenga, who's the founder of Kwanzaa, he had established the US organization. Us means just that, us, meaning us as Black people. He and members of his organization, or the Kawaida movement, identified as, they described themselves as Black cultural nationalists. There's a difference now between Black nationalism and Black cultural nationalism. Black nationalism says that Black people should be in control of our own communities, businesses, politics, hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. You know, many of us have heard this. Whereas Black cultural nationalists say, well, yes, we should be in control of all that, but we need to return back to Africa in some way or another, beginning mentally, okay, culturally. And so you'll find Maulana Karenga in a lot of the, at that time, a lot of the Black cultural nationalists, these were our brothers and sisters that would wear African garb. They would take on African names. They would follow African traditions. You know, we just finished celebrating Kwanzaa on January 1st. Kwanzaa comes out of that. Kwanzaa comes out of the Black cultural nationalist tradition. Well, many of the original Panther members, they didn't identify with that. They were pro-Black, many of them, but they weren't necessarily pro-African. They were not necessarily pro-African culture. Many of them were inspired, like I said, primarily, you know, by white leftists, communists, Leninists, Marxism. And you'll find that in a lot of the literature of the original Panther Party. Remember, they were famous for selling Mao Zedong's Little Red Book. Anytime you hear the original Panther Party, you'll hear people talk about the Little Red Book, which actually was the ideas of Mao Zedong. Okay, you know, Mao Zedong out of China, he was a communist. He helped lead the Chinese Revolution, kicking white people out of China. So a lot of the Panthers, like I said, you know, a lot of the Panthers, they have subscribed to that, but they were not knowledgeable on African culture. And at a certain point, several times, there were clashes between the Panther Party and the US organization over political philosophy, cultural philosophy. Okay, and so many people oftentimes will criticize the Panther Party for having politics without culture. And many people will criticize the US organization, or the Black cultural nationalists, for having culture with no politics. You understand where I'm coming from, okay? And so you can actually see this reflected in the original 10-point platform. You find a lot of grassroots ideas, but you also, you know, you'll find some of the Marxist and the Leninist ideas, you know, being anti-capitalist, if you would, okay? So here's what happened. Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad joins the new Black Panther Party in 1997. He had already been friends with Aaron Michaels and them since 1994, because when there was an assassination attempt in 1994 in Riverside, California, on Brother Khalid, Aaron Michaels and members of his organization, who at that time, I believe there was only 2 chapters in Texas. The new Black Panther Party was founded in 1989 in Dallas, but I believe that at that time, there were only 2 chapters, Dallas and Houston, okay? Aaron Michaels, Brother Captain David Foreman, who was the Minister of Defense, okay? Remember, Khalid is from Texas. He's from Houston, so he had a lot of ties in Texas. Aaron Michaels and members of the new Black Panther Party came to Brother Khalid's hospital bed after he'd been shot to provide security for him, because at a certain point, I believe at that point, security, actually, no, I'm not going to say that. No, I'm not going to say the security was, that Nation of Islam security was pulled off him at that point. Attorney Shabazz would probably know better than me, but for some reason, the FOI, I don't think they were at his hospital room like that. So they came to his aid. Khalid joins in 1997, the new Black Panther Party. In 1998, he is elected national chairman of the new Black Panther Party for self-defense. And under his leadership, it will go from 1 or 2 chapters to several chapters. It will become a national organization. You know, Brother Khalid had brought in that same energy that he had brought in the Nation of Islam under Minister Farrakhan, to help Minister Farrakhan rebuild the Nation of Islam, helping the Nation of Islam under Minister Farrakhan's leadership to once again become a national, then international organization. Khalid brought in that same energy. Brother Khalid, before joining the Nation of Islam, I think in 1967 or 1968, I believe it was 1968, after hearing Minister Farrakhan was a keynote speaker at a program at Dillard University, Brother Khalid's alma mater, and at that time, Minister Farrakhan was the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So he was speaking at college campuses across the country. Brother Khalid, that was his first time meeting Minister Farrakhan. But before that, Brother Khalid had already, he never joined the original Panther Party, but he had worked with the party. He had worked with the original Panthers, but also he, Brother Khalid, like I said, was a part of the whole Black cultural nationalist movement. Now, keep in mind, although Brother Khalid was diehard Nation of Islam, he believed that Allah came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, believed that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is his messenger, believed the white man is the devil, Yaqub, all that. But he still, prior to that, he had strong Black cultural nationalist roots. And even when he came into the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he never let that go. Khalid always remained African-centered, if you would. He still remained African-centered, okay? So I'm saying all throughout his career as a Supreme Captain, National Assistant, National Spokesman of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he was the Minister of Mosque number 7, the Minister of Mosque number 20, Mosque number 7 is in Harlem, Mosque 27 in Los Angeles, the Minister of Mosque number 15 in Atlanta. Wherever you sent Brother Khalid, whatever his post was, he still kept that African centeredness about him, perhaps more so than any of the ministers under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That was Brother Khalid's background. And Minister Farrakhan said that when he first met Khalid had on a dashiki and an African medallion with a big afro when he first met him, when he picked him up from the airport to bring Minister Farrakhan to his campus to speak. Okay, so once again, Khalid never let that go. He never let go of his nationalist, his Black cultural nationalist roots. And that's why when you look at lectures of Brother Khalid, while he was Minister Khalid under Minister Farrakhan, he would sometimes say, we bear witness, to Allah. We bear witness to Osiris, we bear witness to Obatala. He was saying this as a nation minister, and he perhaps was the only minister that could actually get away with that under Minister Farrakhan's leadership, to mention the names of so-called African deities. And when I say so-called African deities, of course, from an Islamic perspective, most Muslims would say, well, that's shirk, okay? But when I say so-called deities, remember, as Professor James Small said, the term deities and gods, that's actually a European concept. It's like a white Arab concept. We didn't call them deities or gods. They were just expressions of the one God. Okay. So anyway, Brother Khalid brought that into the new Black Panther Party. And you can see it reflected within the new Black Panther Party's 10-point platform. And so tonight, I'm focusing on the 10-point platform of the new Black Panther Party. And of course, I just made the connection between this 10-point platform and the 10-point platform of the original party, giving respect to the elders of the original Panther Party who were still around. But we still say, Ibae, let it be said, Ashe, it is agreed. We pour water to the earth in their honor because it is within African tradition or Black tradition to always give homage to our African ancestors. And in the new Black Panther Party, regardless of which formation, most of the chapters would always start with giving libation. The chapters are supposed to have a minister of culture. And on the National Central Committee, you had a minister of culture, whereas in the original Panther Party, to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't have a minister of culture because they really didn't place an emphasis on, as I said, on African culture like that in the original. Just now tuning in, a lot of the East Coast Panthers, like I said, Asada Zakor writes about this in her autobiography. You'll find that many of the East Coast Panthers had African and Swahili names: Asada Shakur, Afeni Shakur, Mutulu Shakur, Zaid Shakur. They had African, Swahili, Islamic names, whereas something that I mentions in her biography is that, you had a lot of Panthers that could quote Marxism, Leninism, communism. They can quote, the Russian. They can tell you word for word the history of the Russian Revolution, but didn't know anything about African culture. They didn't know anything about Ghana, Yoruba culture, Akan, Ifa culture, ancient Kemet. They couldn't tell you about that. But, they were pro-Black. So in the new Black Panther Party, Brother Khalid emphasized the importance of we as Black people, we as African people, of reconnecting back to our roots. That's where the Black cultural nationalism comes in. And you'll find that within the 10-point platform of the new Black Panther Party. So I'm going to go through the 10-point platform as concise as possible. Number one, we want freedom. We want the power to practice self-determination and to determine the destiny of our community and the Black nation. We just finished celebrating Kwanzaa. Self-determination in Kwanzaa, as Dr. Karenga said, the Swahili word is kujichagulia, meaning self-determination means that we define ourselves, okay? We tell our own story. As Dr. John Henry Clarke has stated many times, for the past 500 years, the history of Africa and African people has been told by white people and by other non-Blacks, other non-Africans. Okay, so when we practice the principle of self-determination, we are telling the truth about our history. Kemet was not a white civilization. Africans were not swinging from trees before the white man came and got us. Civilization began with Black people. See, that's an example of self-determination. We talk about the Moors. We talk about the Nubians. We talk about Western Africa. We talk about all the civilizations that started out of the Nile Valley and spread into the rest of the continent. Okay, that's self-determination. When we say determine the destiny of our community, the Black nation, we have to stop referring to ourselves as minorities. See, it's amazing to me that over 50 years ago, Black people weren't referring to ourselves as minorities, okay? And, Brother Malcolm has stated at that time, we are not minorities. We belong to a world community as Black people, okay, outside of America. And when Malcolm was the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you see old videos of Malcolm when he was still with Mr. Muhammad. Malcolm was standing in front of Elder Michaud's bookstore. And you notice it's a picture of a bunch of non-white men. And it says, I think it says, we outnumber white people 11-1, okay? Malcolm, was explaining, and that's actually Nation of Islam teaching and Garveyite teaching as well, who the original Panther Party was also inspired by Garveyism. That's why in many cases, they had the red, black, and green flag. But Elijah Muhammad and Marcus Garvey emphasized that Black people belong to a world community and we're not minorities, okay? The rest of point number one says, now here's the cultural nationalism that I'm talking about now. Once again, we already just finished mentioning self-determination, but this is the further emphasize what Brother Khalid was trying to do. We believe in the spiritual high moral code of our ancestors. We believe in the truths of the Bible, Quran, and other sacred texts and writings. We believe in Ma'at, balance, and the Aguza Saba. We believe that Black people will not be free until we are able to determine our divine destiny. See, that's self-determination again. Now, what did Brother Khalid when he said we believe in the high spiritual moral code of our ancestors? Okay, well, family, I'm a member of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization. Brother Khalid was a member of this organization. Most people don't know that. Even people that claim to be students of Khalid, they don't even know what ASCAC is. This was an organization that was co-founded by the immortal Dr. John Henry Clarke, okay? And we study African civilization before the coming of Europeans and Asians, all right? And Dr. Maulana Karenga, once again, Khalid, being friends with Dr. Karenga or being an associate with him, he brings that cultural nationalist teaching in the organization. And so when you are studying Black cultural nationalism or Afrocentricity, a term that was coined by Dr. Molefi Asante, right? You do realize that there were books before the Bible, before the Quran, before the Torah, okay, that existed in Africa, excuse me for coughing. The Huzia, which was translated by Dr. Maulana Karenga, a book of high moral code, the book of coming forth by day, the so-called Book of the Dead, Ptah. All right, these are books that were in existence thousands of years before a Bible, Quran, or a Holy Torah. The Ptah has been said to be, has been referred to as the oldest book in the world. Okay, the principles we believe in Ma'at. Ma'at is the African goddess of balance, reciprocity. Okay, she's always depicted as a woman with wings, and it has been, it can be argued that whenever you see justice in the Western world being depicted as a blind woman, it can be argued that that was taken from Ma'at, you know, because Ma'at represents justice. Yagusa Saba, these are the principles that we just finished celebrating during Kwanzaa. See, Brother Khalid believed in celebrating Kwanzaa, anything that will connect us back to Africa. But also, oftentimes we talk about Dr. Karenga founding Kwanzaa, but most people don't know that Brother Khalid had established the Black holiday in I think he founded it in 1997, might have been 1998. No, it might have been before that. Attorney Shabazz might know, it might have been 95, 96. He founded a holiday to replace Thanksgiving called Jiname. Jiname comes out of the Ghanaian language, the Akan language, okay, which is also, it's a language that's a part of a religion, just like with Yoruba, okay? Once again, we had religions and holy books before the coming of the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the Bible, Torah, in the Quran. Brother Khalid establishes a holiday very similar to Kwanzaa called Jiname, and that means in the Akan language, except God or but God. No one is above you but God. It was actually it's to replace Thanksgiving, and it's supposed to be celebrated literally the Thursday that Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving is celebrated here in America. He created a holiday, and I don't even think that there are even 10 people in America that know how to perform the ceremony. I know 3 of them, Brother Baba Zaid Muhammad out of New Jersey, Brother Divine Allah out of New Jersey, and Brother Yusuf Shabazz out of Georgia. All of them had the honor of serving. I served with all 3 of them, but all 3 of them had the honor of serving under Khalid Abdul Muhammad in the new Black Panther Party and being trained by him. Okay, so Brother Khalid set up a holiday. So once again, he was emphasizing Black people returning back to the traditions of our ancestors, because, you know, we have a lot of Black folk that claim to be pro-Black, but they can't tell you the first thing about African culture. Okay, you know, which is really something. And just to let you know, when Khalid had came into the Panther Party, I said earlier, for those of you who are just now tuning in, I mentioned how, you know, Brother Khalid, I said that the new Black Panther Party, like the original Panther Party, is an amalgamation, meaning that various philosophies mixed. Amalgamation means a bunch of things mixed into one. With the original Panther Party, you know, you had Nation of Islam, Garveyism, communism, Marxism, other revolutionary groups. But in the new Black Panther Party, very similar, Nation of Islam, Garveyism. What Brother Khalid did when he came into the new Black Panther Party was he merged the principles of, he took the best out of the various philosophies. He took from Black cultural nationalism, you know, the Kawaida movement, okay? He took from Black nationalism. He took from the Nation of Islam. He took from Garveyism, okay? He merged the principles of Black nationalism and Black cultural nationalism and Black revolutionary nationalism and Afrocentricity, merged that into the new Black Panther Party. And in my judgment, and I said this while I served in the new Black Panther Party, no other organization on a national level, Black organization on a national level, has been able to do that. And so you'll find that within the new Black Panther Party, and I definitely noticed this under the leadership of Colonel Malik Shabazz and under Brother Khalid, you will find people that were that came out of the Nation of Islam, Nation of Gods and Earths, African Hebrew Israelites, Nubians, who joined the party, practitioners of Yoruba, Akan, Kemetic practitioners, if you would, people who practice what is referred to as the other traditional African religions. You will find all that within the new Black Panther Party. And that's actually what Brother Khalid wanted, okay? And no other Black organization that I observed that actually did that, okay? But these were people that came out of various Black traditions and they were pro-Black, and they actually used that to enhance their mission, to enhance the new Black Panther Party, but as well as to enhance their own lives as Black activists. Okay. So number two, we want full employment for our people, and we demand the dignity to do for ourselves what we have begged the white man to do for us. See, that's Nation of Islam and Garveyite teaching. Elijah Muhammad referred to that as do for self. Marcus Garvey and Elijah Muhammad. Once again, just to let you know, Elijah Muhammad, when you hear me big up Garvey and Elijah Muhammad, I'm not saying that they were the only ones, the only Black leaders to teach Black people to do for self. I am saying that on a national level, they were the most successful. Garvey being the largest of the two, he had the largest Black organization and the largest Black economics of any Black organization in the history of the world, and after him would be Elijah Muhammad. The reason why Elijah Muhammad's economic empire was not as, I would say, was not as vast is because it was a religious movement. You had to become Muslim to join the Nation of Islam, whereas Marcus Garvey, his movement was non-religious. But either way, they were still the most successful in galvanizing Black people on a national level to put our money together to create jobs for our people. Okay, you had supermarkets, you had dry cleaners. Under Elijah Muhammad, they had banks. I think they had at least 2 banks: Freedom Bank or Independence Bank, supermarkets, farms, et cetera. Garvey, building clothes for our people. Garvey had said something to the effect, send me your nickels, pennies, and dimes, send me all that. Garvey had Garvey had printed his own money. Now, you're a bad man if you're able to print your own money. He had a ship line. Of course, people would try to discredit it and say that they weren't seaworthy. Okay, if that be the case, we respect Garvey for his effort. We respect the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and all those that attempted to help us for their effort. Ibai Ashe. Okay, but this here, we want full employment for our people, and we demand the dignity to do for ourselves what we have begged the white man to do for us. That right there is that do for self teaching that Black people have actually practiced since emancipation. Okay, since the days of the Freedmen Bureau. Before that, unfortunately, whenever you mention the concept of independence to most Black people, most so-called African Americans, I'm noticing that a lot of them will look at you like you're crazy, like this is something new. We actually had this, and there are many people that still remember this in their lifetime until integration came. We actually had a do for self mentality collectively. We had no choice. The rest of number 2, we believe that since the white man has kept us deaf, dumb, and blind, and used every dirty trick in the book to stand in the way of our freedom and independence, that we should be gainfully employed until such time we can employ and provide for ourselves. We believe further in power in the hands of the people, wealth in the hands of the people, arms in the hands of the people. See, that's that original party line. See, we share that as well. Number 2, we definitely share that with the original Panther Party. Okay, that right there, that's that power in the head. That's that grassroots teaching, if you would. That socialist teaching, that communist teaching, if you would. But remember now, Karl Marx, the founder of communism, had studied, most people don't know this, he studied African communalism. And as Dr. John Henry Clark said, communism, that's a baby. That was nothing new. Karl Marx studied African communalism, where everyone in society contributes to the pot and everyone is able to benefit from the pot. Okay, but this right here, in terms of, right now, there's a big controversy with a lot of the, I don't like using the term, the so-called illegal immigrants, many of whom are Latin. The complaint is actually among many Black people. I'm saying, many conscious Black people, like a Umar Johnson, is that, Black folk are fighting for immigrants to get over here. And we end up getting passed over for a lot of these jobs, a lot of these scholarships. You have a lot of so-called legal immigrants that are, getting free education, getting free healthcare, getting money, or even those who are not so-called illegal immigrants, getting money, many, coming from Latin countries, many of them coming from Asian countries, and some coming from African countries who are getting, they're getting resources that should be available to those of us who help build this country. Okay, so what we're saying, what's being said in point number 2, is that we should be at the front of the line. In other words, we should be in that first draft round pick when it comes to getting jobs. Since we actually primarily built this country, the wealth of America came about as a result of Black slavery. Read the book by by Dr. Claude Anderson, Black Wealth White Wealth, Black Labor. He wrote that book explaining this. And many people are still unaware of this, that America's wealth came as a result of Black labor, forced Black labor. And whenever people say that Black people are lazy, we weren't lazy when we were building America. Okay, so that's what point number 2 is explaining. Okay, so yeah, point number 2 is explaining that yes, we have to create our own jobs. But in the meantime, okay, after all the blood, sweat, and tears that we committed, that we shed as a result of building this country, we should be the first ones that are offered these jobs in America. Okay, a lot of Black people benefited during the Great Migration. The reason why so many African Americans ended up in the North during the Great Migration that began taking place in the 20s, okay? Elijah Muhammad was a part of that Great Migration. That's how he got to Detroit. A lot of them were they were leaving the South because of the jobs in the North, the factories, okay? The factories into the 1980s had employed a lot of Black people. I'm talking about if you got a job at a factory, okay, that was a good job. Okay, benefits, and you can retire off benefits. Only one person can work in the house, and with that one job, you could feed a family, buy a house, put children through college. That's how good those jobs were. A lot of the transportation jobs, if you notice, a lot of the transportation jobs that you see to this day, the majority, when you go to these major cities such as North, DC, New York City, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Chicago, okay, most of the transportation jobs, you notice a lot of Black people have these jobs. A lot of older Black people have these jobs, okay? That's because, if my memory serves me correctly, the transportation jobs were among the first to integrate, to employ Black people, benefits, good jobs. I'm sorry, somebody sent me a text. I was making sure that it wasn't the chairman, telling me to slow down. Okay, but anyway, so we demand full employment. But anyway, what I was saying is that a lot of these jobs, a lot of these transportation jobs and these factory jobs, they were employing Black people. They were amongst the first, definitely the factory jobs were amongst the first to integrate before integration became a law. But I believe that also applies to the transportation companies as well. Okay, but like I said, but at the same time, point number 2 is also saying that, while we're applying to work, okay, because, use that money or employ yourself. There's something that in the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught. He said, either get a job or create a job for yourself, okay? And so he said, if you're gonna work for the white man, fine, work for the white man, you're gonna get an honest day's work. But at the same time, create a job for yourself so you won't have to beg anymore, right? Point number 3. In fact, hold 1 second. I'm just making sure I didn't leave anything out discussing point number 2, okay? We want tax exemption. This is point number 3. And an end to robbery of the Black nation by the capitalists. We want an end to capitalist domination of Africa in all of its forms: imperialism, primitive settler colonialism, neocolonialism, racism, sexism, Zionism, apartheid, and artificial borders. Family, I recommend that you read 2 books. One, a book that came out in the 1940s by the immortal Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, family, before you start snapping on me about Dr. Du Bois, he sold out Marcus Garvey, okay? Dr. John Henry Clark had referred to W.E.B. Du Bois as the best intellectual that Black America ever produced. Yes, he referred to him as arrogant. He was from the Black bourgeoisie. And so a lot of Black bourgeoisie, Black folks feel that they're better than Black folks who, may not be as educated, okay? Yes, he's the type of person you would never take him out with you, to the bar or to a restaurant just to sit down. But we as Black people have to stop using every little flaw that our leaders have as a result of discrediting them. He had flaws just as Garvey had flaws. Okay, which one of our leaders didn't have flaws? We have to stop, if you would, deifying, many of these women and men. They're going to make mistakes. Keep in mind that it was W.E.B. Du Bois. He was having the Pan-Africanist conferences in the early 1900s before Garvey came on the scene. Just like, some of you that say that Booker T. Washington was an Uncle Tom, Booker T. Washington, he organized the first Pan-Africanist conference called the Conference of the Negro in the 19th century. A lot of people don't know that about Booker T. Washington, okay? But anyway, back to Du Bois. Du Bois wrote a book called The World in Africa. And it pretty much discusses point number 3 here, okay? The exploitation of Africa. Okay, read that book. It's still in print. It's actually my favorite book by Du Bois, The World in Africa. The other book that I recommend you read is a book that came out in the 1980s by Walter Rodney called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. It talks about all this in point number 3, okay? I'm gonna finish reading to you a point number, okay? Now, just to let you know, when discussing the Black Panther Party, okay, you cannot, it's like you can't discuss the Black Panther Party without discussing Huey P. Newton, okay? You cannot discuss the Panther Party without discussing 2 Kwames, Kwame Ture and Kwame Nkrumah. Now, Kwame Ture, of course, he was originally Stokely Carmichael. He was over the All-African Revolutionary People's Party, and that organization preceded the Black Panther Party. And he was so dynamic and so well-read and so well-studied that at one, the Panther Party had asked him to come in, and he served as the, quote, prime minister of the Black Panther Party for a while. Okay, Bob Brown, who is Kwame's closest friend, actually goes into that history. He told me how that came about. Okay, and then of course you have Kwame Nkrumah. Now, Stokely had got his name from 2 African leaders, well-known African leaders, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana and Sekou Touré. Okay, Sekou Touré, so that's where he got his name from, Kwame Touré. Kwame Nkrumah was one of the first people to use the term Afrocentricity to determine African-centered thought. Okay, he studied in the United States, right, and he was the first president of independent Ghana, which the Europeans have referred to as the Gold Coast. They were exploiting that part of Africa for its gold. Okay, they called it the Gold Coast, and they got independence. Many of those African nations that got independence in the early 60s. And Kwame Nkrumah was very instrumental of that. He identified as a Pan-Africanist. And Kwame Nkrumah, like many African leaders, was inspired by what was taking place here in the United States of America. He graduated from Lincoln University, but also he was there 10 years after the first president of independent Nigeria, Brother Azikiwe. 2 of them were members of my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma. Kwame Nkrumah spent a lot of time in Harlem. He actually lived in Harlem, but many of the African leaders spent time in Harlem, such as Robert Mugabe. He spent time in Harlem, and they were inspired by a lot of the Black liberation movements at that time, many of them that came out of Harlem. So, okay, so you always have to, give homage to them. So Kwame Nkrumah, being a Pan-Africanist, he believed, of course, in the unity of people of African descent, but like Dr. John Henry Clark had stated, he said that anything that people of African descent do, you always have to have Africa as its focus. Africa should be our focus. And so Kwame Nkrumah, Kwame Ture, coming out of that Pan-Africanist tradition, they emphasize point number 3 here. Now, when you're reading this here, okay, and this is very long, of course, to, like I said, I will be as concise as possible. Point number 3 goes on to say, okay, now I want you to study this very carefully. It says, we believe that this wicked racist government has robbed us, and now we are demanding the overdue debt of reparations, okay? The reparations movement, which has been in existence since emancipation, the 40 acres and a mule. There were various reparation movements during emancipation. And of course, that is still a major issue. In this last presidential election, that was the first time in a long time that reparations was actually a part of a presidential campaign. Now, 3 years ago, was it 3 years ago? Yeah, 3 years ago, 2019, okay, we had covered the reparations hearings that was on Capitol Hill. Dr. Junior Malveaux had spoke, Ta-Nehisi Coates had spoke. There were various people that were pro and con regarding reparations, okay? So to finish reading this here, it says a form of reparations was promised 100 years ago. See, we just mentioned the 40 acres and a mule as restitution for the continued genocide of our people into a meaningful measure and repair the damage of the African Holocaust. Magamiza Ma'afa, that means a terrible event occurred. And so Amiri Baraka used to always discuss that. He used to always discuss the Ma'afa, Magaiza Ma'afa, African Holocaust known as slavery. I recommend you read the book, The Black Holocaust 101 for Beginners. That brother is out of DC, but his book is still in print. It talks about the tragedy of slavery, the traumatic effects of slavery. It's a beginning point. Of course, Roots touched on it. If you're gonna, Roots touched on it, of course. But there have been various documentaries, well, I should say movies on slavery, Sankofa. But there's one that was banned for a while that they actually reintroduced in 2003. You can find it online. It's called Goodbye, Uncle Tom. Some versions it's called Farewell, Uncle Tom. And it actually gives a horrific description of what went on during the Magamiza Ma'afa African Holocaust known as slavery. Let's continue. We're still at point number 3. Okay, and because of all of this, because of the tragedies of neocolonialism, tragedies of criminal settler colonialists, with European nations and now China taking over African nations, okay, in the name of creating infrastructure, exploiting the resources. And of course, the biggest resource of Africa is us. People who support reparations, this is the rationale for people that support reparations, is that, okay, because of the damage that has been done to people of African descent, okay, we deserve compensation for that. I just finished saying that the wealth of America was built primarily as a result of forced slave labor, Black slave labor, okay? We believe our people should be exempt from all taxation as long as we are deprived of equal justice under the laws of the land, and the overdue reparations debt remains unpaid. Okay, so we just spoke about that. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, on the back of the Muhammad Speaks paper in the Final Call newspaper, he spoke about that, a tax exemption. I believe he does. Okay, I don't want to misquote. Speaks about that. Like, in other words, all the damage that we suffered, why should we pay taxes to a government that keeps oppressing us? Okay, and of course, just to let you know, I've actually had the honor of attending the Indaba conferences that used to be held in the early and mid 2000s. The Indaba conference held in different parts of the country. Various reparations groups, including in Cobra, organized these conferences, and they would always have Minister Farrakhan keynote it. Okay, he's keynoted it, many times over the years. The Indaba conference, look it up, NDABA conference. I've had the honor of attending it along with Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz. Actually, Attorney Shabazz has spoken at these conferences in years past. Okay, and of course, I've attended in the capacity of an activist and as a journalist. All right, so, and that debt, and I once heard Minister Farrakhan say that the damage has been done, so much damage has been done, is that you can never actually cover the full debt. Now, keep in mind, for people that are anti-reparation, here in America, Native Americans are being compensated, Asian Americans are being compensated, for being swept up during World War II. If you were Japanese or if you were another Asian, the government put you in camps. And then, of course, members of the Jewish community who were the victims of the Holocaust, or their relatives victims of the Holocaust, they received compensation and are still receiving compensation. Okay, so that's been an argument of Black reparationists, that since everyone else is getting paid, why can't we get paid? A book that I recommend you read is Dr. Conrad Worrell. He edited this book called The Case for Reparations. He wrote that book some time ago. He passed on last year, Ibaye Ashe, Dr. Conrad Worrell, the National Black United Front. I've had the honor of being in his presence many times, but he wrote a book or edited a book called The Case for Reparations. Okay, we're going to finish on point number 3. We will accept payment in fertile and mine-rich land, precious metals, industry, commerce, and currency. As Brother Malcolm had said, land is the basis of all independence. Unfortunately, most of these Black organizations are not talking about owning land. They're not, many of our organizations are indeed pushing assimilationism. And any talk of Black nationalism is always obscured. It is in many cases ignored or deleted. Okay, as a journalist, I've had the honor of traveling across the country and covering these conferences that are put on by educated Black professionals. And when you mention the concept of independence, separating, there's always huge pushback. I went through that a few weeks ago. Okay, I was on a conference call on Clubhouse and discussing that. And it was a room that was partially dedicated to Malcolm X. And when I mentioned the idea, what Garvey and Elijah Muhammad said about separating, or other organizations such as the Provisional Government for the Republic of North Africa, there was a bunch of pushback. And then it ended up becoming a shouting match. Unfortunately, Black folk are so tied to whiteness. Anything that separates us from whiteness psychologically, it causes us pain. And this is why Dr. Joy DeGroy discusses in her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Okay, she wrote that book discussing this, how we're wounded from that. Okay, let's go on. As genocide crimes continue, people's tribunals must be set up to prosecute and to execute. Our Black people ready to have that discussion. Now remember, the Jewish community did that, and they just sent somebody. There was a Nazi just last year, I believe, a former Nazi. He was in his hundreds or getting ready to turn 100. They got him, found him guilty. I'm not sure whatever happened to him. Okay, but for years, for decades, members of the white Jewish community went after former Nazis, okay, that were in those concentration camps before and during World War II. Okay, that decade that the Holocaust took place in Europe, those people that were involved, if you're alive, they don't care if you have 1 foot in the grave, they're coming after you to hold you accountable. Now, are Black people ready to take it that far with those who have done us harm, who keep doing us harm? Okay, the Jews, in quotes, meaning European Jews, were given reparation. I just said that. The Japanese were given reparation. I just said that. The Black, the red, and the brown nations must be given reparation. The American white man owes us reparations. English owes us reparations. France owes us reparations. Spain and all of Europe. Africa owes us reparations and repatriation. The Arabs owe us reparations. The white Jews owe us reparations. All have taken part in the African Holocaust. Great to have that discussion. In the book, The Case for Reparations by Conrad Warbrill, it goes into that. Okay, who's to pay, who's owed to which of the nations of Africa helped sell us over here? And of course, that's actually been a major, just to let you know, right now within America, you have, of course, the ADOS movement, American Descendants of Slaves, and the FBA movement, the Foundation of Black America. Okay, they're demanding reparations only for us here. Okay, whereas from the Pan-Africanist perspective, like Conrad Warbrill or the NCOBRA organization, they're saying that Black people worldwide are owed reparations. Okay, but the FBA and the ADOS movements are saying, no, we should be focused only on ourselves here. And there's actually been a clash between Pan-Africanists and the ADOS and FBA movements for maybe 4 or 5 years now. There's like a clash. There's like a clash now. But of course, the Black Panther Party is strictly, hold one second. Hold on, family, 1 second. Like I said, the new Black Panther Party is strictly, Pan-Africanists, okay? But we respect our sisters and brothers, those of us that who are Pan-Africanists, I know I do, collectively, we respect our sisters and brothers who identify as ADOS or FBA. All philosophy, see, when you're a Pan-Africanist and a Black nationalist, we welcome various philosophies. We welcome disagreement, okay? What we don't welcome is the canceling each other out, name call, put downs, innuendos, outright mudslinging, simply because we disagree with each other. We have to agree to disagree. Okay, brother, hold 1 second. Something had jumped off. Okay, here we go. All are taking part. We're still on number that skipped a little bit, number 3. All are taking part in the African Holocaust, in the slaughter of 600 million of our people over the past 6,000 years in general and 400 years in particular. We know that this is a reasonable and just demand that we make at this time in history. Of course, here's that Nation of Islam teaching. I told you, Brother Khalid added all that. Those who follow the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad Okay, whether you consider yourself Nation of Islam or Nation of Gods and Earths, they're taught that the white man, when he was made from us, Black people, that the scientists, the 24 scientists, these are the Black men that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said they rule the world from behind the scenes. You would consider them, these are highly advanced men. These are our brothers. These are, Elijah Muhammad said, these are the angels that you read about in the Holy Quran and in the Holy Bible, Holy Torah. He said that when the white man was made from us, they had predicted that his time was only to last for 6,000 years. And since the white man has been alive, he has killed 100 million of the original people. So that's where that number comes from. So that's Nation of Islam teaching. As I said, just like the original Panther Party, for those of you who are just now tuning in, just like the original Panther Party, the new Black Panther Party is an amalgamation, meaning it is it's a mixture of various beliefs into one. Okay, that's what Brother Khalid did. He brought in Nation of Islam teaching. He brought in the Qaeda movement, Afrocentricity, Black cultural nationalism, Black revolutionary nationalism, Hebrew Israelite, African Hebrew Israelite, Nubians. And here's the thing about Brother Khalid, okay, and Attorney Malik Zulu-Jabbar speaks about this. And by the way, if you haven't already, get the book of Khalid. This is the first biography ever written on the life of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, written by Attorney Malik Zulu-Jabbar. I'm one of the editors of the book. This is the first comprehensive book on the, like I said, biography on Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. And you can see Brother Khalid evolving, and of course, towards the end of his physical life, you can see Brother Khalid saying that he had borrowed, I believe it was at the meeting of the Masters in the year 2000 in Atlanta. He said that as he evolves, yes, he's Nation of Islam, but he said that as he evolves, he found himself taking from various philosophies, the Black affirming philosophies, as a part of his evolution. Okay, so and I heard Attorney Malik Zulu-Jabbar say that him and Khalid, what they would do, they would study the philosophies of the various Black organizations. Okay, not just Nation of Islam, but Nubians, Qaeda, Afrocentricity, Hebrew Israelites, African Hebrew Israelites, the Kemetic community, et cetera, because as you know, we as people of African descent, we are very diverse, if you would. Okay, and here's the thing. Whenever you have to be very careful which spiritual belief system or religious belief system that you attack or criticize, because from a historian, from the perspective of a historian, or from the perspective of an anthropologist, every group of people, every so-called race of people has their own myths. They have their own legends. African Americans and African people are no different. Okay, it's amazing to me whenever people would criticize, for example, we just finished mentioning the Nation of Islam teaching of the white man being made. Okay, when people would ask me or would mock, they would mock their belief, I would say, well, wait a minute, if you're a Christian, you believe in Moses splitting the Red Sea, or if you're a Jew or Hebrew, you believe in Moses splitting the Red Sea, you believe in angels you can't see, you believe in, if you're a Christian, you believe in a virgin giving birth without the aid of a man, you believe in a man, two men dying and then being resurrected, Lazarus and Jesus, but then you may mock the Nation of Islam or the Nubians or the African traditions. You have to be very careful, because every group of people historically have always made up myths and legends. Just like Europeans are no different. You have Greek philosophy, you have not Greek philosophy, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Norse mythology, Celtic mythology, but no one ever attacks them. No one ever will accuse them of criticizing them or mocking that teaching, or even calling them devil worshippers. If you notice that African people are the only ones whose belief systems are always mocked and ridiculed. Okay, so you have to be very careful.